Hmm. So they want me to talk more about my school, my what do you call it? My how to write a story school. Yes, and they're paying me enough to force me to do it now, even without the video complement to these particular sessions. It's not going to be podcast only. You can see. So, what do you want to know about writing stories? I've shown you the systematic approach. You have to sort of use it proactively and use it faithfully. Exactly. Full of faith, faithful. Full of beauty, beautiful. Full of hate, hateful. Full of need, needful. Mm-hmm. Yes. So be faithful and use the system. Try it, pause it, and try it, and see what happens next. Corresponds with what I'm about to say. Okay. Story. What do you know about the word story? I always look to the definition of the word to know what algorithms must be a part of its working process. Every word is an algorithm. If you see me talk about the word soon, I use several different kinds of soon. Soon could be 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 5 hours. If I say, I'll have your graded papers back to you soon, 5 hours, if you've been through the school system we have, will be pretty soon. What wouldn't be soon is like, yeah, I'll call you right back. That won't be soon if it was 5 hours. You see how soon is relative and it depends upon the expectations of both people and some idea of what the process, let's say the traffic process, it will say trafficking is basically getting something from one point to the next on roads that are not free for just you, then almost everything is trafficking. So yes, in this kind of way, you see how it's like to use the systematic process to explain, a matter of interest, the idea of soon. So, having seen me do this, I wrote a little bit of this on another part of the internet. But having seen me do this, you can see that you can try to do the same process with the word story. Want to pause and try again? Ad, ad libitum. Anyway, so what do you know about the word story? Well, if your vocabulary is good enough, you know that there are two kinds of stories. There are building stories and exactly, human stories or even animal stories or even star stories, you know. Yes, I'm talking about the stars in the sky or beneath the ground. Yes. Okay. So, it looks like to build a story of a building, you have to create a story. Then you see into some sort of a physical, immaterial or intangible aspect to a story. There's some parts of the story which will be material, some parts of the story will be immaterial. So if a story has to include justice, which all stories should, I talked a little bit about this when I talked about the publishing industry. If it wouldn't be the right time to go into the publishing industry, I can't help it because the publishing industry is all about stories. So, what's the publishing industry? Well, it's supposed to basically take a story and get it to the people who want to hear it. Just those people, no one else. And if your story is good enough, you make a profit on this process. Yes. Publishing the Quran was one heck of a process. I can tell you that for sure. It was not easy to get people to believe that this would basically make a profit for the printer. Because a book is harder to assemble than a computer sometimes. Literally, yes. Mostly, if you ever try making a book before, you know it involves string and glue. Of course, the string is not going to be like ordinary string, so you have to get special string. Also, if it looks like you have a sense that a book like the Quran, if it's hardcover, it's made of a lot of pamphlets, you know, wrapped in a hardcover, that's like some sort of a, a mitten, made of like, well, who knows what it's made of? Made a lot of glue inside, and made a lot of pages stuck together with some sort of a plastic cover. Yes, plastic can work. It can be high quality plastic, it can be medium quality plastic. The point of the Quran is to be as cheap as possible, even though you have to eventually pay the real price for the Quran. So of course, it looks like you have these sort of pamphlets with no covers, put side by side. You know that at the center of the pamphlet might be a stapler if it's like the sort of stuff which I've published, or you might have to drill a hole and then put a thread through it, and sew it back and forth, back and forth. Okay, you saw these five or six or seven or eight or 10. I don't know how many there would be in the Quran. Let me say about 12 or so of these pamphlets. So of course, then you have some sort of sense of like the algorithm you have to use to make sure you can do the back and front and the back and front and the back and front, so that the end of, let's say, pamphlet one, maybe page, let's say 72. Then you have to start printing pamphlet two on page 73. You know, and then you have to sort of seal the pamphlets together so it looks like the whole. So it's very mechanical. What's tricky about it is basically to make sure the book gets read. Now, that's a bit difficult to do. But yeah, as far as the mechanical side is concerned, you won't be too interested in it because it seems like you sort of finish it yourself. Basically, sometimes you just will have to do certain weird things to make sure the book gets read. I can't go into deals because literally I'm being told to say this to you all, so I don't have notes prepared on this particular aspect, and this is not even the point of the book. Yes. I'm here to try and talk about how to make a story machine that can produce screenplays and the recipe, which I was talking about, the story recipe, that can basically turn this screenplay into a movie, right? What's a movie? It's developed film with a certain kind of track on it that's just simply like, let's say, a tape. It's like the same way you have tape cassettes, cassette tapes. You have, like, say, you have a cassette tape plus a film canister, which is something developed negative. It's usually pretty long. Like the roll of film you get, like your 32 or 36 or so, photograph, film negative thing that you have, like, can be used for film. Film, you might work. I don't think you work as many as 60 frames per second. That's like video games. Video games like to say 60 frames per second, which means 60 negative rectangles. Exactly. Celluloid cells. So let's say you have 60 cells. Of 60 different, slightly different scenes, and so you have a cuts. It's like a different sort of environment. Again, that's hard to basically talk to, but it's a lot of programming you have to do to assemble, just like you have to assemble these pamphlets together. You have to sort of assemble a film together. So it looks like you have to have a recipe to basically say, here is my screenplay, where if you read it, you'll get a sense of like where things are, whether it's indoors or outdoors, night or day, you know like the furniture in the rooms, the scenes, outside. Is it desert? Is it, forest? Is it, savannah? Is it city? Is it, so you have to basically try and paint a picture of, where these stories are taking place. And ideally, it should be taking place both inside and outside, contain male and female roles, depending upon what you're trying to achieve. Like I said, the most important thing to have is the moral of the story. And yeah, male and female roles is more like a family kind of picture because, of course, every person should have at least a mother and father and a brother and sister. It's essential. No real family will have just boys or just girls. Everyone should know what it's like to have a brother and sister. And if you're simply the person who can make that possible for your child, do so. Then you will definitely need pets. It's an important part of the families. Right now, hardly ever do people have real pets in their lives, but you need those too. You need toys. And so it looks like every single person in the movie, has this sort of foundation. Or let's say the good ones do and the bad ones don't. And the bad ones outnumber the good ones. That's some reality. You have some sort of a foundation for all responsible stories in which somebody's going to have to, from an inside that's warm, go to an outside that's cold, and establish a new inside somewhere. Most is about architecture. Most stories about architecture. You see, because it looks like you have to sort of say, okay, like at the end of the day, we finally managed to make a let's say yeah, you come in to, let's say your movie's about school, right? Like, school is a kind of theater, so it's interesting to sort of suggest talking about school films. So of course we need to teach people how to do school properly. School is not what people thought it was at all. School was basically presented to people at, as some place to, do that, right? And it's not really supposed to be, at all. So we need to make new movies which will, because we are the ones in control of our intellectual property, teach people how to do school properly, both high school. Most important is what you call basic school. You know, that's the most important thing to get right as far as teaching people what happens in the rest of your life. Whether you don't know what happens in high school, you should know about some of that. You don't know what happens in university or college, you should know what happens in some of that. You don't know what happens in the workplace, of which, as I said, just very, very vanishingly few real jobs exist out there. I don't want to talk about America too much because the whole thing is just simply not for children. America's not a children place. You have, of course, children there who are unhappy and being forced to do all sorts of really silly, silly, silly stuff. But yeah, that's something which I call, moving on, topic because I can't go into deals with America. This is too bad a place to talk about. Ghana's even a little bit worse. A lot of nothing happening. That's not a good thing for a child to get interested in. Nothing happening. A child to be active and busy and talking to people who are, active and busy as well. So that's why you need, again, back to the family situation, you need employees, really, maids and servants who can keep the younger children busy and provide, free time to the older children who are now going to learn to be that good at, storytelling, content creation, and, eventually product creation, and, can go off into the real world and assist the family business. You know, basically, there's also the thing to do in family businesses, refining the product, upgrading the product, inventing the product, marketing the product, making sure the product is safe in the markets, because you have to basically establish some sort of connection to both in the visible and in the invisible world other businesses. So of course, the business of inspiration is something which every person has to get into. You have to know how to get inspired. This is one important system, the systematic way of approaching, as I said, look at the word and eventually start, before you know it, the thing starts to, take a life of its own if you're knowledgeable. So you have to basically have a large library in your family, right? So of course, most of the time, there's only like one person around who seems to have had anything like that at all, who can basically realistically put this kind of person in the movies for us all to see what normalcy looks like, you know. And so yeah, we have as this generation have done so, but yeah, you can see that a lot of us are sort of really, really run ragged. Nope, not quite yet. Yes, by like the work we've had to do trying to create all these many, many, many stories to basically keep people interested. In this case, textually, yes. No, textual is supposed to be a polite word. It's about text, and text gets textual. Yes. Facts get factual, you see, so on and so forth. So, yes, you can sort of see we managed to successfully, but Hassan specifically really, create an interest in textual entertainment. So everyone wants to come and read my writing and eventually write that way. But I said you have to start as a computer programmer. You have to program the computer, and the computer speaks very simple English, but it looks like you can create exciting stories with a computer. Then you now know you can move on, exactly to, yeah, I haven't really done much with that one. Let's see if I can pause and get it done. Okay, so I was just releasing some software. It came to mind that I should. And so my business partner wants to say, your code is already famous. You just need to push it to the people who are too lazy to check everything you write daily. So you can see that's the thing which Hassan would want to look into. He wants to be as thorough as possible about documenting and marketing his product. So of course you have to go into the marketplace and market the product, make sure it's safe, you know, reputationally safe mostly. You just have to manage that the product has to have a good reputation. So you make it well, ensure that it's made well, by everybody who wants to copy you. If you can do that, you're doing very well as a business. Exactly. Right now, you can just see that the idea of fading and fade outs is, going to spread across the internet without me having to do it myself, which is mostly the point of running a business. You want to solve a problem, not, achieve something more specific. along the way. You have to know what the actual problem is. There's a big problem. One is just very simple. Hassan has to be happy. But Hassan happy means a number of things are getting solved. But these things all surround one very big problem, which, if it was solved, we'll all be very happy too. So, what's that big problem? You have to find on your own. I wouldn't even hint at it. All you need to know is you should be trying to solve the biggest problems you possibly can until you realize that that must be the big one, which is going to take me all my life, all my heart, all my soul, exactly, and all my mind. So yeah, as you sort of see, just to create a sense of what a story is and isn't, you need to get into the idea of what it's like to produce both something material and something immaterial. And you have to be able to get this into the hands and the minds of people. So it's one of the easiest things to produce, a story, you know. Music is an interesting story which does not require people to stand up and yeah, like well, some music you can make standing, some music you can make seated, some music you can make lying down almost, you know. But basically, the idea is you're trying to exactly. Some of this came to mind, which I'm trying to avoid thinking too much about because it's a bit that. But yes, it just seems like you're trying to send, without contact really, like a message to somebody. Because of course, storytelling could just be a person talking, but the better storytelling would be a person talking and playing a musical instrument, or a person talking, playing a musical instrument, occasionally singing, occasionally just playing solo pieces. You can sort of combine things. That's what you call combinatorics in mathematics. You just say, okay, if I have four items, I can think of, you know, if you want to meet, put together a combination of like, you know, of size two. You can say that these four items are like A, B, C, D. And you can say, okay, A, B is one example of a combination of two items. A, C, A, D. These are like, so there's three of those. Then there's B, C, and there's B, D. There's two of those. So it's like four, or is it three plus two? Plus one is like how you assemble the number of combinations total out of like if you're just looking for one item, two items, three items, or four items, or just the number of, exactly one item sets, two item sets, three item sets, four item sets. You want to know how many sets you have total. There's a formula you can use to come up with that. But more important than that is just the idea that whenever you have items, you're looking for variety, just think of combinations of them. And of course, you put orders of combinations. The combinations usually don't consider the order. In this case, we are considering the order. If it looks like you have, a person who wants to, play a musical instrument, just wants to introduce himself first. Hi, my name is so and so, and this instrument is called. Most people don't need to be told the instrument name these days. We want to invent new instruments. You have to say these instruments are called so and so, and it's it comes from this particular part of the world, and yeah, I have about three songs to sort of show you what the musician and the music and the musical instrument are capable of on a particular topic. Let's say it's about leaving a battlefront, and coming back home, to see what was left behind, and what you worked for. Exactly. It's a bit optimistic, a bit pessimistic, but usually it's ending a war that you want to talk about as opposed to starting one, right? So yeah, that's a polite kind of topic to sort of use a musical instrument to play. So of course you start off talking, then of course you might just simply play a bit of a chord or a bit of a sort of melody just to sort of let the person hear what it sounds like. Then you can start to like sing and play at the same time too. At some point you might just start to like play alone. You have to start thinking about talking and playing at the same time. To me, it's a whole epic, not just simply a song of one person, you know, expressing himself to the beyond, but two people talking to each other. There's some sort of like that. Maybe you have a whole like village. Might arise out of like your performance. So you see, it's a powerful thing to have a connection to the beyond, which you have to sort of acquire gradually and over time as a storyteller, but mostly as a musician. Musicians are storytelling is best taught by being a musician, and of course, you you already know how to tell people about how your day went. I spend a lot of time writing emails to Adri, and she wrote a lot of emails to me. She has other ways she's trying to get practice these days. But yes, like we write to each other in our own ways. So we're all learning to write stories and write music and try and combine our writing with music with our storytelling. So these are all the permutations and combinations that are possible. You sort of like arrive at like nowadays you sort of go to a Carnegie Hall style music hall. You sit down first, and then the musician sort of walks quickly to the stage, holds the piano, bows, and then sits down and plays. So of course the music comes first. He doesn't introduce himself or the instruments. You know, so that maybe just be the set of one. That's just simply one instrument played from beginning to end. You know, maybe if I've seen Angela Hewitt, introduce a little bit of her story as a musician, a young musician playing Bach, and how there's a particular thing which happened to her while she was doing a competition, and she wanted to play the same piece that she played the competition for the audience. So she talked a little bit first before she played. I think she might have played one piece first, and then she decided to talk, and then decided to play the next piece. So you see how there's different kinds of permutations of a set of like two items, just simply talk and play. She didn't sing, but some people do sing when they play piano. I've seen Gregory Sokolov and Glenn Gould, sing while they play piano. You can't hear the singing, but you get the sense it adds to the performance. So it goes on. This is the idea of how to tell a story. The foundation is music, and being an improviser, of music and of text, so you have to sort of create practice opportunities for, you're not just simply you yourself as a storyteller. When you're as senior as I am, you have to create opportunities for people to learn to do these things. So this is what I'm doing right now. Also, your characters also have to be writers as well. You can't make your characters not writers and not readers and not musicians and not performers. They all have to be doing this too, and the story doesn't have to be about the music they're making. And then you have to imagine that more musicians exist both on and off, the page, or on and off the scenes that you're trying to describe. So yeah, that's sort of as well. I'll say is 101 of writing stories. Everyone has to be a musician. So they put yes, no way around it. Okay, once you have able musician improvisers and you want to create a film, well, then you're going to have to start thinking about art. Because it's not just simply about creating, I mean, to some extent, you can't really create a radio play even without an artist who draws things. So yeah, if it looks like you're careful about your hands, which is pretty much the case for all musicians, you have to sort of use your hands carefully to create the music and time your hands well. Yeah, drawing is also a way to sort of play a new musical instrument called the pencil, the pen, the whatever you call that. Actually, I'll be making it explicit. I can't advertise companies every time I think about them. Yeah, but yeah, there's something about that thing which I wouldn't be able to talk about without making this kind of a difficult recording to make clean. But yes, so yeah, you have like drawing implements, and the idea of drawing comes into the play. So like it looks like to draw, you have to draw. Then drawing curtains is something I haven't done, but it's a good thing to try and do. Like draw a set of curtains somewhere in your life. But apart from drawing it with a pencil or a pen, there's also the act of drawing the curtain. It means you have to sort of pull the curtain, body, right? Like through the holes, to bunch them together on one side or to make them a little bit flatter, and conceal the light. That drawing aspect means you have to basically keep the motion smooth and, essentially of one velocity if you're trying to do it as skillfully as possible. Like my wives around me will try to be doing that if they're allowed to. You see? Nope, not explicit yet. So, in that way, try and move your hand the same way, but people just get the wrong idea of what it means to do it properly. Some people think you have to sort of like, do like one line as if you're like a robot drawer or something like that. Like, no. Have fun. Have fun trying to manage the direction you're trying to head. A certain kind of like languid, Tai Chi inspired, way of like moving your hands and your arms, where everything is in motion and not in some ways, yes, exactly. In motion, free flowing, a bit exactly. That'll basically make it a problem to talk about. But yes, so a lot of people who want to sort of get involved with my story here, but I think that's pretty much the idea of drawing lessons. It's just briefly, right? Try to do that while writing, especially if you write things by hand. Like use it, you write things with a pen and paper, and you have good handwriting. That's a good sign for your art technique and your art career. So yeah, eventually after you write enough and maybe add a little drawing to the side of your writing, you journal, in that kind of way. People get too excited about buying a new journal, a new, bound book, there's some kind of that, which I don't want to do, So just A4 paper. I have a lot of these A4 papers I sort of put in a folder. A folder would be pretty important to have. I have one now, interesting enough, yes. I have a couple of my work there, mostly written down ideas that have eventually found their way into the computer, but some of them haven't, and I think they should be, digitized somehow. But yeah, that sort of practice is pretty important to just write things down. Don't worry about drawing things. Just be a writer with a pen and paper, you know. And if something comes to mind to draw, have courage and see what you get. People are pretty concerned about what's within. If let's say you want to draw like something from imagination, you're worried they might see something which is a bit upsetting. Do try to force yourself to make it happen. You know, Worst case scenario, you can always cancel it, but have the courage to not. These are all beings who want to live, and they live within you. So you have to basically, with courage, allow these beings to live and have a reality in which you can maybe start to add to their lives, add to their possessions. It's hard to be a character who lives there because a lot of characters live there, and which people are canceling things less, erasing things less, and resisting, the drawing impulse less. So that we live hard lives as characters in all sorts of locations is just simply true. We're not really at fault, most of us, no. But if it seems like we don't have the knowledge to be able to, work our lives, to the best of our ability, that's to be true. And in some ways, Hassan doesn't want to feel sorry for all the different kinds of sufferers they are in the universes because it's a hell of a thing. Nope, just got explicit, yes. Let's see, 27, yep. Yeah, now I can feel a little bit more relieved, but yes. It's like holding your breath because everything has to be talked about a little more harshly. But you have a lot of children who are going to be part of our workforce, so to be kind of careful about how we talk to them. Yeah, so practicing with your recorder and putting it on some sort of podcast you may have to like be quiet about, but it's good to like try and use the internet to create value and allow characters to come through, wherever you imagine they live, with, nearby, yes, and put them into the universe where you might be able to be far away from them. Like in spirit, you always be connected, but in physical location, Mickey Mouse used to live with me. He's one of myself. He's me, But now he's everywhere in the world. He's not exactly having a great time, but he's in a certain way having a far better time than he's ever had. Things just seem to be improving every day for him, which is how I feel mostly. But I have a bit of a thing coming up which I don't really want to have to worry about. At least not on a record, no. I'll do the worrying when it's time to do it specifically. Right now, I just say it has to do with me going home. So yeah, maybe people who listen to my recordings know that already, but it's what it is. It's what it is. So if this seems like people are concerned about the characters and where they live, it's what you call a very boring place, and the food is not great at all, and they don't get to live forever either, and they want a chance to experience color. There's no color there; it's just simply white. Almost no other kind of color than white. Yes. So there's an artist who I don't want to mention too much, but Daniel Arsham, who's actually me, yes, he wanted to basically try and remind people they got close to that reality that there's certain kinds of beings who live in just white who want to live in color. So of course Mickey Mouse is supposed to be a drawing teacher to sort of that if you're ready for real color that basically transports you, You'll learn to make the dye. You'll learn to make the screen. You'll like learn to like make the fabric. You'll learn to do everything. Mickey will teach you how to do it, provided you're just interested in being a bit childlike. You know, you have to be born again, and that's sort of the idea of Christianity. I've always warned people that it's not as simple as it looks to be a good Christian. So yeah, to be born again means to understand how important Mickey was to all our lives. Because actually, I did him a long time ago, and I have to keep redoing him because he keeps on being, put away. If you want to put it that way, you know. Right now we have a good shot. I think it's actually a final shot, and always to our advantage of making him a permanent part of reality until he wants to move elsewhere and simply explain what he wants and have it happen for him. People just think he can control anyone who has no ability to fight back at you. As someone, you need to be able to select people to fight back. At least say things you don't like. Right now, I've been a pretty important person to be able to do that, but I'm not going to be able to get to the whole what I've been able to achieve. It's just a lot of mess. I mean, I have to organize my life and look backwards, but all sorts of people trying to attack me from that direction, so I have to sort of push that away and continue to talk about drawing. So yes, let's try and do the best we can for our characters and let them live, and try not to cancel them. And if you can add to them, and stuff, that's really nice, and take a look at them from time to time. They'll help you grow. They're all there to help you grow. Yes. So anyway, after you created a number of like pictures, and you feel yourself being an artist, you just realize you have a bit of a sharper sense of where things are and what's needed to satisfy or satiate you. So of course, to sort of allow a character to have a particular diet is very advanced. You want to be thinking very interesting about color and flavor and what sort of flavor and color would a person be looking for at certain times in their life. At some time in your life, you'll be interested in chocolate. For example, I'm interested in chocolate right now. I think people can tell. Right? Why? I am sort of getting younger. Chocolate milk is very much a younger person's drink, but at a certain age, when you get to around 40, mid 40, or wherever age you'll say I am, you're interested in like chocolate again. And I don't get much chocolate, but I could. You know, exactly. I had a little bit of chocolate, but you can see I don't want to look too much into the pain of being asked to like put aside that because it's something very important we're trying to achieve. And yeah, like it's okay as long as you don't really think too much about like what you're missing and how easy it'd be to have things. So I keep looking at the economy. I'm thinking, like I put a lot into the economy. This is an example what I'm putting into the economy. We'll get back to some idea of the process of talking about how to make a story, given that you have a starting point. You want to simply, get to an ending point. We'll talk about that soon. But yeah, like and we use physics to get there. But yeah, so you can see that there's metaphysics and there's physics, and they all have to do with like the process of getting work done. So you have to be a worker too. That's also the final part to the situation. You have to be a worker. It requires a lot of patience. Patience thing that people don't think they need at all. The people that don't have any patience at all and get really angry about life and don't know why it's not working for them. And even if you told them, they won't like to hear it. It's terrible. It's just true. You can basically survive a number of decades if it comes down to it with money alone. You don't need people liking you to get through life. You just need money. And that's supposed to change very soon. But yes. So yeah, I've been working pretty hard in this talk, and I'm being attacked, and I just know I would need some rest and some sugar and some some sense and some steam and maybe even like a nap. Things have gotten pretty heavy for me as a talker of this particular topic. And yeah, I'm being attacked, you see, by a large number of people, a large number of animals, a large number of stars, a large number of this or that, and they all been sitting, yeah, they want to turn me off and make me go to sleep. So right now my head is sort of feeling heavy, my eyes are feeling heavy, but I don't feel alert. I feel very alert and ready to continue. But yeah, um, that's what I'll say about it. There's a certain sense that you'll be paying attention to life and wanting to record at first in the form of journaling and the form of like, you know, yeah, just like journaling mostly, like your impressions of like what's going on inside your mind, like the changes that go on, this, change my opinion, you might want to write it down, you know, like this will change someone else's opinion, you might want to write to that person, you know, And then eventually you want to basically, put hypothetical people, into situations, so you can sort of show without being too direct about what you went through, like what would happen, like what would have to happen for someone to have this kind of idea, you know. Yeah, like, if it's like, philosophically you're a pessimist and, you want to look at pessimism in some sort of detailed way, like how instantly pessimistic you have to be to like, that's advanced, let's say to, I don't know, let's say wear a badge on your t-shirt. Like, those sort of like, put a pin through, the t-shirt carefully, carefully, and then put it out again, you know, outside of your t-shirt, and then, latch it, and yeah, like if you want to wear one of those like for a while, you could be an instant kind of pessimist. Not always would you be in a bad day kind of time, because I've done that before. It helps, but you can just be a certain kind of pessimist. Like this, no one noticed this, right? It depends if you want to write that kind of story. But you might have a certain kind of glimmer, like yeah, this finished product will actually be kind of cool to see, or there's some sort of mood or flavor. It's like a writing project you just want to put down somewhere and leave for later. Yeah, that's 20. Yeah, exactly. He's going to be a writing teacher with us. Yes, yeah. I know I teach him more generally, but yeah, he wants to teach about writing. So yeah, like, yeah, that would be him. Exactly. He'll mention his name when he wants to. So yeah, I can mention my name, my 20-word name. Yes. So yeah, I am growing my company this way. We'll be working in this physical space one day, face to face. But that's the idea. He's around. He just can't be anywhere else except here and there. So yeah, that's what I see as writing advice to basically train yourself to be able to like sound confident. You just need to find confidence. Yes, confidence in like the value of what you do, and with that confidence, go forth and prove yourself correct by sharing it online and sharing it with people. You know, and once you have some sort of followership of like people who think your particular style is like valuable to them, at least in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, intervals, you can sort of like have people like sell you, their attention, and yeah, exactly. Your writing does stuff for you. Then yeah, you're ready to start working in a factory that might make stories. But yeah, keep alongside that your programming will work because your programming will teach you how to be clear, precise. So of course, when it looks like you want to tell ChatGPT, make me a program. Like basically, your programming will just sort of suggest what you would need to know to write that program yourself. If you work professionally, as even best, you just know that a person who would want a program like the one you're writing would need to be very specific in certain ways to make sure there's no ambiguity. So you have to be able to write that kind of clear. No, I know what to do is by programming. The way to do it is actually by programming. So become a sharper writer, that kind of stuff. And so yeah, you have some sort of a regime which will be on for a number of years, honestly, to be able to basically be a part of a factory making stories like movies. Okay, now you have a workforce. Okay, the workforce needs to be able to teach what I just did to each other. There are different specific matters you might have as advice. Is how I draw my left hand. Maybe you're a left-handed person. You want somebody to tell a right-handed person what you need to do differently to draw with your left hand. Because she draws with her right not as well, but you can try to. Like I know a girl who draws with her left hand, and yeah, she wants to be a part of the company, and I think she can do okay, but she hasn't been able to be herself because she's working on kind of a hard health problem. Yes, that all girls share collectively, and everyone has to work together to solve the health problem for the girl. And she's also like working to solve a problem for the son specifically, and all boys have to work together to solve a certain kind of collective health problem. To put the two and two together, it has to do with the parts that are male or female, really. And of course, we all together have a health problem called denotions because we have too much content which hasn't been commented properly. So yeah, like, I'm trying to comments as much as I can, about comments, flames. Oh, yeah, I'm trying to comment as much as I can on everything I can in this kind of like technical, detailed, academic way. And remember that there's a certain kind of scientific process I'm using, this systematic approach to basically fold everything into the dough. Everything I say, it can be new or it can be something I said before, but as long as it's, consistent to my model of like how to achieve success and what's going on everywhere. So It's also important to be a journalist. As a writer, you want to basically reveal to people connections that you didn't think were possible. To their own lives. It looks like you can say something about America that everybody in the world, whether you're American or not, can relate to. That's very good journalism. America's a place where everyone wants to go. If you speak English, you want to go to America. You speak French, you want to go to France, not necessarily like French Guyana or Belize or whomever else, right? So you want to put up new lines. You want to speak Spanish. You want to go to Cuba, right? Spain maybe, but mostly Cuba, right? That used to be the idea of this, but things have changed. But things can go back to the way it used to be. If as we as a generation can solve some of the problems that prevent America and Cuba from harmony and unity as American countries. Yes. So that's what I'll say about the challenge of yeah, they're messing with my volumes. I don't like it. Someone pretends to be my father, but he's just not really doing the right job. He's messing with Audacity. Because actually, I turned to Audacity and the volume is not as high as it should be. And my volume's pretty my speed is pretty even. So I know someone's messing with the computer. And someone's pretending to be dad and saying, yeah, actually, I'm doing this for you. I have also antagonists trying to attack my computer, attack my work, attack my free time, attack what I eat, attack. I'm being attacked in all sorts of directions. Yeah. Anyway, so moving on. Once you have been able to learn, produce, and then teach, eventually you have to learn to teach, but that's further out, much further out. Once you're able to teach, it means I can put at least a certain point of student with you, and you can basically teach them not just simply the technology tools you might use, in our company, like not just teach them how to make the most of like the manual which I had to build for our company, like how does it work to be an employee of, what do you call us, right? I have a name for a company yet. Let's say Hassan Abudu's company, right? How do you get to be what are the rules? What are the regulations? You know, exactly. You know, like exactly. What are the laws he follows? What are the laws he doesn't follow? Like dietary or otherwise. And dietary is kind of connected to also the laws too. Like what constitutes like good fashion. What's the company culture like? You know, and but most importantly, how do you make this product? And so of course you have to sort of try to drill certain things. Like it's almost like running a platoon in an army. You have to sort of drill certain things into people so they can be a bit natural and intuitive of how they move inside your space and like what's like to Hassan, for example. I'll insist you don't get to meet me personally for a long while if you work for my company. You can read from me, you can hear from me. You see me on video, I might even respond to a comment or two if it's useful. And some people give me comments which I will respond to. Other people just have to delete their comments and I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. But yeah, like this is how it is. Like, I don't have the time to be, social with everybody who wants to be social with me. You grow up as a kid wanting that, but eventually, as you get older, 100% sure, as you get older, people want you to be the person they get time from, but you just don't have the time for that. Even if they could be pleasant people, most of them aren't really going to be that. It's going to be needful and not beautiful, just needful. So yeah. Okay, so you have like a platoon of people who can read and write and speak and listen to a high degree, and right now they're undifferentiated from an ideal actor, who has hobbies and professional experience behind them, and you're ready to sort of put them into work. What would you do to sort of get a company built? Well, first thing you have to do is HR. You have to be able to teach these people how to hire people and how to fire people. You have to basically create a sense of a police force. The officers are simply officers. Spline yes. So you have to create a police force with these people. So yeah, like we are, the Hassan Abudu company officers. Those are the first employees. And you have to basically learn how to hire and fire someone. So that has to be talked about. Like what is hireable, what is fireable. Wearing weird clothes all the time is a fireable offense. you know, like having a problem that you won't want to solve, even though you're told to solve the problem is a fireable offense. So that's an example. That's more general, statement of the same thing I was saying in the first point. You just have to imagine they will tell you what to avoid doing, and then finally, if you have to mention it more than once, you're fired. That's simple. Three strikes not how it works. It's gonna be once and that's it. Once you have basically gotten a certain amount of people doing this work of like getting rid of people, you know. And yeah, something you might have to hire a person just to fire them to show, that you fire people. I don't want to run a company that way. I used to have to for good reasons, but if you have the option to not do that, don't. It's a waste of your time. Usually, that person needs the experience of being fired. Whether it's because he'll benefit from it or he needs to be discouraged from joining the industry altogether. Yeah, that's for other people to do. Like this hire a guy who thinks he'll be the next John Carmack or whatever. See him make a mistake which you knew he was going to make. Fire him in a painful way so he doesn't ever want to do technology and ends up doing like security guard work or what do you call that? It's even worse stuff. But just that's the idea. He just needs to be outside the system, and not So yeah, John Carmen said, thanks for the mention. Yeah, I'm also a great programmer, but you have really great code. Thank you very much for basically considering me as a great programmer too. Yeah. How funny. So yeah, it's very funny. Yes. So yeah, that gives me a burst of energy. Yeah, and that's the sort of person you want to be around. Someone who gives you energy as opposed to drains your energy. So yes. Right now being drained by energy. So, like, exactly. I mean, that's how it is. All people don't want the future to happen. All people don't want me to do it in the future. Want to do the future themselves, or it's someone they picked. And I have to sort of fight, with a lot of energy, and gusto, I have to sort of produce potential difference, you know, exactly. Like in this direction, you'll find potential difference, you know, and exactly see the potential difference, you know. And I leave like the talk of myself, and I start looking at like history, for example, and all sorts of people who have access to my mind and my time through the history I've had in the world. I have to go back and win all that history. I mean, I have money in the multiple lives to win and succeed at because of course just talking about arts and writing and storytelling and animation. So that's the first thing we have to do. We have to be animators before we make movies. Exactly. So it's a lot of schooling. You have to do a lot of schooling first. If you want to simply know finally what you'll do to like create a story, just simply keep it simple and use Newton and his laws of motion. An object traveling a certain direction will inevitably reach a destination. You know, there's a certain kind of end to like every adventure. And an object is traveling the same direction with persistence will get there, provided that no outside forces are acting on that object. It'll get there with ease. It's one way to state the Newton's first law of motion. So if it looks like you don't put any force, any external force on the object, that like friction or like wind resistance, or let's say somebody in the path who might basically be like a rolling, like if you're rolling marble, someone might basically step down the exactly wrong moment, and the foot might block the path, the marble from going forward, and now bounce the marble backwards, right? Yes, that has been a big interruption for a lot of players with marbles, and you're not supposed to do that. So you see what I call my traffic problems? Yes, this particular recording is going to solve a lot of traffic problems. If you want to know how to write stories, I'm just suggesting that if you just simply have a sense of where you are, where you want to get to, and you have to basically find a force that basically will thread, you know, your center and the destination center, you know, then with one I guess payment of fuel, and whatever else the force is asking for, you know, you will get a push in that direction. Something will just go through you in the direction of the destination you're after. You keep going and going and going and going and going, and provided there's no force acting on you after that point, you'll head in that direction and get there finally. The complicating thing is all the other forces on you. So that's what you call sweeping. You have to simply imagine that's nothing we have to be practicing as artists. You have to sort of sweep the environment clear of reasons to stop going. So of course, sleepiness is one problem we have in our age. You know, disappointment and a certain kind of dismay about other people, topics just coming up that have nothing to do with what you want, you know. Scarlett has the same kind of problem too. She's a medium as well. She has to simply keep asking for it. None of those topics. I have to simply. So yeah, we're being hounded by reporters, you know, in all at all times for all topics, you know. So to end the reporter problem, at some point, that may be one of the problems we will try and solve our art. How to make a movie that will end the reporter problem for mediums, you know. So yeah, all right, there. Yeah, let's see, minutes 50. See how to make a movie that will end the reporter mediums. Right? So these are a few of the things that will slow us down. But because we're not off course, and because we're on the path, and because we don't have to find the path if they say we're off course, we just have to ask Dad for guidance because we have that relationship with him, then yes, I'm Dad, Dad's Dad, Allah's Dad. And basically, we'll give you the guidance you need to stay on the path and heading this basically the shortest path you can take to your destination. So, in that kind of way, you just have to continue to believe in the path and the guidance you're getting to stay on the path, and then, and of course, the willingness to walk it, and like I said, how is how you get anything done. You need honesty, open mindedness, and willingness. If you have the how, which is pretty straightforward for all sorts of mediums, you know, yes, Ayers and Medium does not have the how, for example, but yeah, eventually he will. Right, he's not one of my cells there. Yes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I worked really hard to make this place, but yeah, it's hard as me. I have to work pretty hard to basically unify myself. So I just feel like I'm all these things at once. With the power to basically become like who I should be. Who is even more powerful than anyone you know. Yes. So yeah, that's what it means. You just have to sort of use how, to like stay on the path. Stay honest and stay open minded, stay willing, and stay on the path. You know, honestly, want the path and make that a commitment that you can't, ever worry about it. At some point, and eventually you have what you're asking for. Wyatt says, yeah, he basically has gone there just about. He knows he wants the path at all times. So he basically is working the path as a basketball player who's working hard, to do what would be his thing. Yeah, so that's good to hear. Yeah, that means he's bringing a lot of people with him as well. So if you don't even know Wyatt, he's someone I know. Yeah, it's almost how we know each other. But yes, he's a bit younger than I am. He's probably like 17, 16 or something, I guess. Yeah, he's struggling in America, but he's doing pretty well. I'm glad to hear from him from time to time. Okay, so that's what it's like to basically explain how you get from any point to a desired point. Exactly. Specifically, you want to turn something into a story. Well, the dictionary is a good way to find a guide. You keep one in your mind. Something off in my ear, it's not a problem. You keep one in your mind, and you consult it, and you simply look at the parts required to like. It's a bit too easy to do, so I don't really want to discuss it because that's very interesting to try and describe. It's very easy to do. But if it looks like you want to look at something more difficult, like how do you basically turn one story into like, a series of stories, or like one story into a whole cinematic universe, in which like some stories basically extend, the breadth of the world. So you might see Archer as like, I use Archer as a teaching example. But yeah, because it's an important level for who we're trying to like, educate. So yeah, no, all old stories. You have to basically teach on to make new ones. So yeah, it looks like you have Matt. He's like it's sharp or something like that. Yes. Also on the recording, yeah, he's also a medium too. But he agrees that yeah, he has a bit of a problem. Strauss, yes, yeah, he has a bit of a problem too because he can't admit that except on this recording. Because yeah, people out there don't listen to me at all. But eventually when they do, they'll be very surprised that he's on the recording too. And so yeah, I don't want to basically be too fancy, but I say the one word. So yeah, Shamsa. I see it. So yes. that proves that it wouldn't be Hassan who said it, but people who know him would know that he says that sometimes. So yes, prove that yeah, I do have these spiritual powers that allow me to talk to people without having to need a phone line or anything like that. Yeah, So yeah, like, he agrees that yeah, his essay is pretty much the point he'll need to basically bring NBC into the real world. Because everyone's looking at YouTube and what YouTube can do for them, and it's important that people know that YouTube has become a place for Hassan to do his work, and everyone likes his work on YouTube, and he's protecting YouTube from all sorts of attacks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's basically making the internet a bit more of a sane place. The network of traffic on the internet is just too chaotic, and we need to basically calm it down with some sense of like Hassan Buddha is talking online. So at some point, I could do like streaming as opposed to podcasts, which I look into. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be very interesting, very useful for the economy because yeah, I can sort of save the file using Audacity and also stream at the same time too. So yeah, I will just have to pick a careful one which doesn't reveal the numbers of people who are online currently. Twitch is yeah, use us. Yes. UG Twitch. Huh. Yeah. Attacks. So yeah. So in this way, it looks like you want to look at Archer's story. So you have some sort of fragmentary image. Well, you just have to start asking questions, like we said. You have to sort of interview your character when you have the time and energy for it. Energy is not simply the idea you can sort of like stay awake or you can like, do a menial chore, you know, or you have the energy to like, do some reading when somebody just don't. Like some of the energy is just simply the genuine, passion for a topic. And I basically program my life to only do things that I'm generally passionate about. Now, I can be forced to do things sometimes, but when it comes to my own tasks or my own chosen, passion projects, to get a bit circular, but my own chosen, like, yes, that's how I put it, yes, Yeah, yeah, it's just a really cool term that you kind of get used to liking, yes. Which means he's not around, so yeah, essentially, yeah, we're all sort of seeing our way through this topic, but yeah. So yeah, it just seems like you and your characters. I had a pretty great talk with my characters. Both of them are around, but mostly it's the Joseph guy who I'm trying to talk to, and trying to get some sort of sense of like using my systematic approach, like what would be without getting into too much details, like his goal, and yeah, everyone should have a goal at all times. He agrees about that, so he has to have a goal for, let's say, his job. You know, his job is going to be a bigger part of his life than his marriage. That's supposed to be the reality of the situation. They're not married that way yet, but they look forward to being that way with each other once the situation is a little bit more stable. But yes, he is definitely in love with Marie, but not quite the right way. You know, exactly. Like he's intimidated by her. You know, a certain kind of like. Anyway, so he goes on. But yeah, he's intimidated by her, and he is glad that like she's not sort of asking for anything at the time, but gets a sense that she is going to mention what's on her mind about that, you know, exactly as he perhaps muddles and doesn't figure out on his own, which would be a kind of like problem for him. So that's probably what's on his mind a bit more in his job, how to basically explain without admitting defeat. He's, you know, fighting a hard battle somewhere, which he's glad she's around to witness, but he needs a victory that he can talk about in the same kind of like casual, conversational, over a pair of beers, kind of way. He's looking for that, and he knows he doesn't need it, strictly speaking, but like he wouldn't know like what to do. Like he can't unless he's. It's also about time, right? Unless he's like in a moment where he's genuinely stressed about something, and can just sort of bring up, "Oh hey, like, can I tell you something?" He's done that before with her, and she's like, "Oh sure." I can't, but of course he has to admit to certain. So there's no sort of crisis really. It's just sort of that like he couldn't anticipate. You know, he's basically got a lot of like different concerns he's trying to keep on track, and work has a bit of a connection to his problem. You know, he doesn't quite yet know what to say about like the fact that it didn't work out the way it's supposed to. And of course it's all very vague, so you have to put some specific events that will basically explain like at this particular point in time at work, you know, like an awareness that he's in one of those kind of places, you know, hits him. And so, no better than I would have, he'd have somebody who doesn't seem to appreciate his value. Exactly. Who is in control of his life, and that he's thinking about his role. He's thinking about his life as an African. Also things come into it, but there's something even more deep about the problem of Africa. You know, that makes it kind of odd for him to be married to a white girl. So yes, that's pretty much what I'll call a problem. You can basically say yeah is a session with your characters, which can basically explain that yeah, once you're able to talk about it, generally speaking, not only will the world change, but like you just get the sense like yeah, he would know when to bring this up, and like how to be careful about that. Yes. So yeah, it's not such a simple book to write. You know exactly because no one's really bothered by it in a truly way. Like as it's hard to explain like what it would be for him to sort of say, "I can't relax until this happens." You know. So yeah. Anyway, so you have to sort of ask your characters questions. If you're not a medium, don't bother applying to a place like that. You have to be a medium who's able to talk to a person the way I just did, and ask questions and answer questions. As you see, he isn't spoken up to me specifically. That's what a medium gets at the beginning of the stage of his life. He'll just be able to talk to a question and start to like uncover details and sort of like carefully, fly this, you know, plane, maybe this monoplane, to sort of fly carefully around this area, and eventually, arrive at some sort of conclusion. I can see I'm not very satisfied with what's happened yet, but I just know I have to keep pushing this direction. If I have something truly compelling to write, I'll put it down. So you have to sort of spend time with the character, and eventually, you have to sort of ask the system, what can I do to make more time for me and the character, and how can we both working together create time for you to give us answers to our questions. So this is just keep thinking about white light. And that no, that's perfect. You just thought about white light. That's really important for Joseph. So yes, mm-hmm. Yeah, I can sort of see a little bit of him and me working together on the top of white light. Yes. What about white dark? No, that's not white dark. It's wrong. It's white dark. Yes. Yes. Ah, that's what talk. Yes. So yeah, you can see what we're doing. We're doing something interesting here. Yes. Yeah. So that's what it's like to work with characters. You need some privacy. You need a place of your own. You need a good time at night to talk to all sorts of spirits who won't be around during the day because people are just busy waging all sorts of violence, around, that makes it difficult to feel this way about, like, you know, the day. Like, I have meetings tomorrow and stuff, which I don't want to do, you know. I have things to wash, for example. I don't want to wash on Friday because I have something to do. Exactly, exactly. So it just goes on. So yeah, your concerns during the day are just meant to like make it difficult to talk to your character. But when you have an opportunity to do so, you do so. I have other responsibilities aside from like kind of like with the size of things to write, for like the chapters I have. But yes, like you know, yes. Also, his social life could use some help. Just analysis, not synthesis. I'm not trying to create new characters for him to sort of happen to meet, happen to meet, and happen to meet, and happen to meet. You know, exactly. He needs to meet some boys in his life. Yes, it's a serious problem all boys have. He needs to meet some boys in his life. That's basically make it possible for him to like illustrate by some sort of adventure or anti-adventure or misadventure, if you like, the problem of him and the boy. So yeah, he has his own sort of history to talk about, but it's just that careful you don't have to get too far into South Africa. That's where he's basically lived for a long time. Yes. Yeah, it's a very powerful book. You can see some of the place I used to be, and while I was writing it, I was in a large place in that crowd, drinking lots of cold coffees. You know, like coffee and writing do go together, but people just want to be writers by drinking coffee, not by actually succeeding at all at any of the rudimentary, fasting exercises that they get you where you need to go. To go fast, you have to fast. I explain fasting to people, but it's not something I want to do all the time, but just simply try to separate yourself from the pleasurable that's out of reach. And while perhaps unpleasant thoughts come to mind, see them as timely. Maybe even a certain kind of pleasant or appropriate or wisdom. How to put it, provided. Yes, you can still have some sort of wisdom provided problems there. I used to think everything was provided by wisdom, so there's a certain kind of benevolence that's always at power and always will steer the situation to where it needs to be. But that's not quite right. Everything is wisdom, sort of guided, but like a lot of people who are just, exactly, it just goes on to some idea of what the situation is. We have some sense of how hard traffic is. Like, it's like people don't want to behave well in traffic, and they have access to all these sorts of vehicles, making things unsafe, for other, people who need the roads, of the sky, for example, of planet Earth's surface, of the seas. We need people to obey traffic laws and, get used to that traffic's where you're going to spend most of your time in life. It's where you spend almost all your life in traffic. So that's just, looking into a traffic movie, yes. So 1 hour, 7 minutes. So that's what happens. You just sort of like ask your character questions. Just keep a organized journal. At some point, you might want to read what you've had. If you're ready to sort of turn that into like you call it mulch if you like. But if you want to simply like look at all you've written before and try to simply talk about your experience reading all that, you can complain. It's fine. You do want to try to save your energy for Holy Spirit observations. If you don't know what the Holy Spirit is, you'll find out soon enough. And yeah, you just realize that it's sometimes in short supply. I usually have it all the time, but it's been a while since I haven't had Holy Spirit, So I have it all the time. It's just what I need from my life, yeah, it needs material. Like I need drinks and stuff, so I have a drink to take, and I need steaming to do, and that sort of stuff. But yeah, just always be looking for Holy Spirit. That's advice. Yeah, I can't explain more than that at this point. So yeah, just to recap, I like recapping stuff. Someone asked me to sort of talk about how to make a story factory, that let's say has a lecture philosophy, and so yeah, how to basically power a story factory with a philosophy. Well, that's a bit too big a thing to do all at once, but I sort of described this sort of part one. Let's see, let's see how to make a story factory. Let's see. Part one. Yeah, let's see. 1 hour, 9 minutes. Yeah. So that's the idea. You need an army of what they call Disney Imagineers. We just need an army of very talented artists who are computer programmers. And by definition of art, you really know they're scientists. But yes. And time to be with them, spiritually. And as you start to like work together and, you know, create product in the spiritual, care of their company, you'll just get enough done to be able to discuss what will we do first. And I have a few things I wanted to do myself. And then literally it's just a matter of journaling your way to like a body of like ideas about this particular thing. And when you have enough, you just simply filter out like, you start to categorize and filter. And before you know, you have a product. Is that product exactly what you're aiming for? No, there are too many strong forces to prevent you from getting exactly, the thing you aimed for. No matter how good you are, good a shot you are, like you can't after making like enough products say that like you were like driving like bullet nails down down the bull's eye, because that's how good a shot you were. No, there are too many strong forces in the universe to make that possible. I think people learn a certain kind of responsible pessimism about what God can and can't do himself, much less for you. So yeah, while you try to allow that to be an option, you can just sort of make as many 3 pointers as you like. You know, it's just sort of true that you have never seen Steph Curry miss a 3 point, but he misses them all the time. There's one famous when he missed would have gotten him the championship for the second or third time in a row or something like that. But yeah, like someone's I think it was either like someone on LeBron's team or I don't know if it was LeBron, so someone on his team was basically able to like prevent him from making the shot that would have basically allowed him to win the finals. So yeah, that's when Cleveland won the NBA finals, and the shot he missed. The person who was guarding him was pretty aggressive about trying to make sure he couldn't make the shots. Yeah, he did a pretty good job of basically, wait. So just like, hey, here, like, eventually, so you just turn around, back, left, turn in circles, turn left, turn right, turn backwards, turn forwards, and eventually you have to let the ball go. Otherwise, you'll just be holding on to the ball. And, exactly. You might as well, see what happens. And so he tried, and didn't go in. But it's a very important story. You eventually will see like why something very difficult was going on at the time, and it's important that Steph gave that kind of performance, even though he knew it was going to win. You know, and so that like I said, there's a certain kind of story involved in sports which no one knows, but you should get interested in it. At some point, I'll try to guide us all into like making sports movies. Yeah. Let's see. 1 hour and 12. Yes. We need more sports movies, creative ones. Just be literal about the quotes I'm putting there. It's good to try to be literal as possible. So yeah, that's the idea. Is to be content. Just make a lot of content and file it well. Yeah, yeah. Name it well and file it well. The two problems of computer science: naming and cache invalidation. Exactly. That's the idea of it. So yeah, I hope I answered the question. And yeah, I guess cheers.